Ahmed Buhari, the vice presidential candidate of the African Democratic Congress, while giving a keynote message on Thursday, 3rd November 2022, at the AU Agenda 2063 Ambassadorial Induction Ceremony in Abuja, stated that, as part of the way forward in Nigeria, a welfare regime whereby the needs of the average Nigerian are met must be adopted. Ahmed, who is running alongside Dumebi Kachiku, the presidential candidate of ADC, also said in order to maximize the significance of democracy, Nigerians should enjoy its dividends.
I am trying to let us understand that human rights, justice, and rule of law are enshrined and embedded in our constitution. However, this hasn't really birthed us the kind of democracy that we truly seek. What is the kind of democracy that we seek? We're looking for a democracy that at the end of the day would be able to give the dividends of democracy to the Nigerian people. So let us look at the Nigerian structure. What structure are we standing on? We're standing on the three arms of government, talking about the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. Secondly, we are also standing on the next leg, which is the public service. I call them the civil servants, I call them the military, I call them the police, and all of that put together. Then what is the third thing? The third thing, obviously, is the Nigerian people. We are the third leg. So everything the executive has to do would be about building up policies, deciding what projects we're going to execute for so year and all of that. Next slide, please. But at the end of the day, this whole process has to go through an implementation exercise. And this implementation exercise has to happen with the civil service.
In his presentation, Ahmed discussed issues based on the theme of the event, which was Africa of good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and rule of law. Speaking further, he reiterated that the Nigerian civil service is the gatekeeper towards ensuring a system with strong checks and balances.
The civil service. If anybody has been listening to me in the last few years, I have constantly been talking about the Nigerian civil service. I've even nicknamed them as the gatekeepers. I call them the gatekeepers because everything a politician is going to do, every idea a politician is going to come up with, every plan, every hope, every aspiration will eventually have to go through the civil service for implementation, regardless of which area: healthcare, commerce and industry, education, tourism. Everything boils down to the civil service. The slide before this one was clearly letting us understand the history of the civil service. And if we can go back to the slide before this, please, the next one before this, you will see that I just don't want to bore you with the history, but at every time from 1960, there was an amendment to the civil service. In 1971, there was the Odoji Commission. In 1979, it was remodeled again to fit into the United States sort of constitution. The Dotun Phillips panel came in 1985 and attempted to reform the civil service. In 1988, the civil service reorganized itself again with a decree promulgated by General Ibrahim Babangida, and so on and so on. Even up to May 29, there was still a revisit to the civil service. And even as recent as 2009, the head of civil service, Stephen Osagede Orasanye, also, made some amendment to the civil service. And at every point in time, the civil service was being restructured or being touched or being played around with. A lot of retrenchment happened. So many people lost their jobs. Some of them couldn't even get their entitlements, like their benefits. Of course, we'll talk about retirement benefits like the pension and gratuity. And what the vibe this sends to the civil service or the civil servants is that, are you sure I'm going to be faithful to this country? Are you sure I'm going to serve this country earnestly? What if I get to lose my job tomorrow and I don't get all of this? I challenge you. Go to any of the civil service today. Go to the ministries. As you're entering, the first thing you see are black and white posters of their colleagues. Mr. Obi Ibrahim, we need 500,000 for his medical care. Account number. Mr. Julius Olusegun, we need 200,000. He's in the hospital. Urgently, we need this money. I guarantee you, if you go back there after a few months, you will see obituary. those people are gone. Now their colleagues are watching. They saw how dedicated members of their staff died without any sort of cushion effect from a system they have pledged allegiance to.
In the civil service structure that's about 6 million people, only about 5% actually take part in this racketeering, he said, as he pointed out the issues and inconsistencies.
And no matter how genuine, honest, and strategic the executives, legislatives, and judiciary can be, these civil servants, who I like to refer to as the gatekeepers, will frustrate them. In most cases, the politicians end up cooperating with the gatekeepers at the expense of the Nigerian citizens. And this is true. Sometimes you're bidding for a contract and you're an honest man, and they say you want to bid for a contract, and you give the allowable 20% markup and you take it to the Civil Service Commission for approval or for consideration, and they tell you, how much did you mark up? And they say 20%. Are you the crazy? What's wrong? So how much will come to take it back? Make it 200%. Because he's thinking, I might fall sick tomorrow and I need this money. Or I can't trust the Nigerian schools, so I have to move my kids abroad. Well, why should I be so sure about this country when even the president uses hospitals abroad? And so that man comes back with a 200% markup, and he does everything in his power to make sure that gets approval. But that is not where it stops. Even when that project is done shabbily, he will still be the one that will be sent to go and check if the project was done properly, and he says properly. 110%. This contractor, we need to get him back. These are the people that work with us to enable the leakages happen. You know why? They are the implementers. They are the ones that have stood between those executives who change every 4 or 8 years and the Nigerian people. But everybody neglects them, in my opinion, or we do not take them too seriously. But all of these leakages I've been talking about, can you believe that in the civil service structure there's about 6 million people? Only about 5% actually take part in this racketeering. And that is why the men I spoke about earlier will die. And the soldier I spoke about in Sabisa Forest will have his child out of school because he's not a beneficiary from this corruption.
In attendance were Dr. Becky Mamza, Honorable Emmanuel Bello, Dr. Tunji Ashaolu, amongst others.